Hey, what's up? I'm Sam Dean, and this is Plug Your Holes. What do you think causes the most damage to people's ears? Well, we checked. Find out right now on Horror Stories of Ear Stretching. Hey, by the way, thank you guys so much for the hundreds of comments over Instagram, YouTube, and email. It means the world to us when we put together a video like this and we actually have some content that's being created. So thank you guys so much for contributing. We're going to continue to ask questions about this kind of stuff in the future. But moving on, let's talk about the 5 most common stretching mistakes. And these are the things that we've noticed through all the comments that came up when people mentioned a cause for their horror story, the top 5 things. With 6 comments, setting electrical tape, it takes in the 5th spot on the list. And I can see why. It's cheap and it's easy, and you think, well, if I wrap it around my plugs, I'm going to get to a bigger size. I've actually made that mistake myself when I first started stretching many years ago. And now I've learned from multiple infections and just a lot of goop, that the residue isn't good for you. It also just gunks up your plugs. In addition to that, there's carcinogens in the adhesive. We even mentioned it in an old Plug Your Holes video, right there. The 4th thing that people did incorrectly was using things that were never intended to go in your ears in the first place. And yeah, electrical tape can kind of apply to that to some degree, but we're talking Sharpies, glow sticks, we're talking straws. We've had multiple people talk about using straws to stretch up their ears, and that just doesn't seem to make sense to me, but at the same time, I understand that you gotta make do with what you got around you. 3rd is kind of funny to me, because it's not just what it is, but it's the exact way it was said almost every time. Quote, shoving a taper into my ear. Just the fact that the word shoving gets used almost every time seems pretty silly to me. As Steve O Negative said, yo, some of these people are telling stories that have zero common sense whatsoever. Well, the problem with common sense is that it has to be common. What is common about ear stretching? Though a lot of people have their ears stretched, there's very little advice and guidance on how to do it properly. That's why we're going to start including instructions along with all of our tapers to make sure that things like this don't happen, that it's an easy thing to do and it's not necessarily a shoving motion that happens. Number 2, with 16 comments citing it as a cause for the horror story, is silicone. It blows my mind every time I see this happen. And I remember years and years ago being with a friend who stretched with silicone while we were out on tour, and his ears looked like they were ready to drag race. They were so swollen up. They looked like big old tires. We've known it the whole time. Part of the reason is because it applies constant pressure. A regular plug is one thing because your body will allow for that amount of space, but with silicone, it's a constant pressure. It causes binding with your skin. Silicone's also not a good material to have on an open wound that it itself is going to cause. Rule of thumb from now on, guys, do not stretch with silicone. It is meant to be worn and not to stretch with. This is the crazy one. At number 1, with 32 comments citing it, is stretching too fast. Stretching too fast is something so common that it is double the next most common thing. So why is everybody in such a hurry? I was in a hurry too. I skipped 2 gauge and I skipped 7/16. I had very little problem with that, and some people will continue to tell you, oh, I skipped a size, it's not a big deal. But the problem is when 32 of our horror stories are coming from people stretching their ears too quickly, obviously it happens a lot. And some of these people who have stretched multiple times, skipping sizes or going quickly, have had very little problems until they have a problem. It's like driving drunk. You know what? You might not get in a car accident your first time, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to, and you increase your chances of an accident every single time you do. So once again, in an old video we did years ago, we said your ears are going to be there forever. Don't go fucking them up now. Get them taken care of, get them stretched properly, and they're going to be a lot better to you in the long run. We do have a couple honorable mentions, though. These are a couple that kind of speak to my heart. One of them is frostbite. Frostbite is something that, growing up in northern Minnesota, I know what it's like to get frostbite at the bottom of your ears. We mentioned last week that ear butter is a really good way to help that. But I highly recommend earmuffs or hats or anything you can do to keep your ears covered, and even just a good hood. More importantly, keeping it out of the wind. On really windy days, it's going to be even worse. Another honorable mention is motorcycle helmets. This is something I can relate to, as well can Brian Radmond, who did our top 10 bands on Warped Tour video. And it sucks. It sucks because they pull up like this, and it is not a comfortable feeling. I almost always ride without my plugs in. They either go in my pocket, or I have a spot on my barbecue where I put my helmet when I get home, and I will put my plugs there while I'm gone, so that while I'm out, they're right there, and so I don't forget to put it back in. Another honorable mention is a couple dog stories that were really kind of surprising, but apparently dogs can bite your plug, put their tooth right through it, and pull the plug right out of your ear. Not fun at all. Though those weren't very common, I definitely figure they at least deserve mentioning because holy shit, that sucks. One thing that surprised me was that only 2 of the comments related to allergy and 3 related to large flare size on plugs. So make sure you know what you're getting into. If you have an allergy to something, make sure that you are buying materials that are non-allergenic to your needs. For example, if you have a nickel allergy, surgical stainless steel isn't enough. You actually have to go to implant grade steel. So buy safely, buy prepared, buy intelligently, and feel free to ask us any questions if you happen to be buying from us. And any other company should be answering these questions for you as well. So you're probably wondering, what are the best ways to stretch my ears? We're going to talk about that next week in 10 keys to having healthy, stretched ears. Last week, we had a couple questions in the comments on YouTube, and I figured I'd take this opportunity to answer them. One is, what size are my ears? They're at 1 inch. They kind of fluctuate between 24 and 26 millimeter because I'll wear different plugs that might not come in one or the other, or I'll wear something at 25 millimeter. My wife is the exact same size, so it's nice to be able to share our plug collection. Not that we need to, I guess we do own a plug company. Another question was, are you ever going to offer a stretching kit for above 00? Well, this is a little bit tricky. For those of you who don't know, we have the starter kit, which gets you all the way from 16 to 0 or 00. I think it's 00. In addition to that, we also have size up kits. So each size, it comes with a pair of threaded steel tunnels and tapers that are steel that are hollow in the back. They're called insertion tapers to make it easier for the whole process. The problem is when you get above 0, 00, stretching with tapers isn't something I advise. We're going to talk a little bit about that next week. We're also going to do a proper stretching technique video. But what a lot of it comes down to is that those tapers are jumping too much. When you're going really early, the jump between 0 and 00 is from 8 millimeter to 10 millimeter. That's only 2 millimeters. All the jumps before that are smaller jumps than 2 millimeters. When you start getting jumps to like 5/8 to 3/4, it's a 3 millimeter jump. 7/8 to an inch, if you're going to 26 millimeter, is 4 millimeters. So we want to make sure that if you're going to be stretching at a bigger size, that we're providing you with the safest way to do it. We didn't feel that a stretching kit with all the horror stories we've heard was probably the best idea for those sizes. We may release individual stretching kits at these sizes, but I don't think we'll go beyond 5/8. And for those in metric, that's 16 millimeters. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. We always appreciate you subscribing, so please subscribe somewhere in here. Also, there's a couple videos that you might find interesting, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.